Hey guys!
Hello!
So for the next, I guess the first part of it here, we're going to be doing the neck. And we've got our neck for Omar already cut, so you can see basically how it's all going together. But we've got our buddy Tim here, and he wants to do a guitar as well. So we're going to cut another guitar, and we'll show you guys the process of how to lay this out and how to cut this. Okay, so the first thing we got to figure out here is working off of our known point. Now in the case of Omar, it's the inside of this tin box, but we're going to set him aside because we're laying out this neck. So the only point we know for certain right now is the inside edge of this box right here. So when we install our neck, the bottom of the neck here is going to be up against that. So that's our first known point. And then we need to figure out where we're at in this dimension so that our neck can be flat on the bottom until it's to the outside of the box and then curve up. And we also need to make sure that this clears whatever hole we need here and goes up above the top of the box and curves out over the top. Okay, so I've got these templates that I made for my style of guitar. You should probably make your own. I just use plastic. Really easy to do. So what I do is I put this along the guitar, and I've got the back of the guitar set to where my known point is, and then I'm going to slide this so that my curvature here clears the outside of the box. And I don't want anything extra, I want just enough so I can clamp that in place, and then on this side clamp this side in place. Remove the tension, reclamp, and we're good. Now what I can do is take a pencil and get this curve
Drawn in. And just something to remember is that the first thing you want to determine is which side you want to be the fretboard. So you're obviously not cutting into that side.
So this is a double template. It's got the spot where the neck meets the box, and it has the top of the neck too. But for right this step, we're just doing this side. So I'm gonna bring this down and get my curve there. Alright, so the next important thing here is finding out where the template goes up on the top end down here. So we have our first known point there, and our next known point is our sound hole where our bridge comes up through. So the bridge comes up, the tailpiece rather, the tailpiece comes up through here, and the strings come up and they go over a bridge. I just put a little piece of wood here just to indicate where the bridge will be. Now this indicates where the bottom side of the string is going to be, and how long the string is very important. For this guitar design we use 23-inch scale, which means that it's 23 inches between this point and the nut, which is the piece that holds the other end of the string. So we need to go 23 inches along our wood.
So 23 inches from the bridge to the supposed nut down there.
Which falls into this slot here.
Okay. Got it.
Okay, so I marked on the wood here exactly where our bridge will sit above this in space. So I'm going to get out my tape measure here, and this is really easy. We're going to measure 23 inches from that line up to this line.
Where's the 23?
Right here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Alright, and now that I have that, I can use that to place the template on the top part. So now when we set the nut into this cavity right here, because it sticks a little bit up above, the string length between the front edge of that and the front edge of our bridge will be exactly 23 inches.
Okay. And what are some other good inch or amounts that people can use?
Now you can use anything you want. I like to use 23. It's similar to a banjo.
And are there resources online for where the frets go?
You can calculate out where all of the frets go, no matter which scale length you're using.
Okay.
And we will be covering that when we do frets.
Okay.
So now I've got the template clamped in spot based off of where we marked it, and now I can go ahead and draw in my curves for the top.
Okay. So for those who are still confused as to how this template shows both the bottom and the top, just pretend that this section is like an accordion and can stretch as long as you want for whatever scale length you end up using. And the design for the head is pretty much our own design, but you can make it as complicated as you want. You can make it like into a scroll. You could add an angle to it, you know, whatever.
Alright, now we'll pull this off so we can see what's going on.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so one important thing here is that we've got our template on the side, and that's going to help us in cutting out the unneeded material with the bandsaw, but we do want to make sure we've got a nice square line marked for when we cut this last bit in the other direction. Because when we cut this out, we're going to need to cut a relief cut going right into the material, and we need to make sure that the blade is nice and square with the material before we do that. Okay, so the fretboard overhangs the top of the box a bit. So the curve comes up out of the box up to here, and then we've got a sort of lip that comes out here. And that's 1/8 of an inch thick. So I need to set its depth right here, 1/8 of an inch down, and then I bring it back a little bit farther and set it also 1/8 of an inch down. And that allows me to put my straight edge into place.
And we like using like aluminum bar stock as our
Extruded
straight edge.
aluminum.
Yeah.
It's nice and rigid. And this just lets me get enough of that set out there.
Okay.
Okay, so here at Toymaker Television, we like to work in style, which sometimes means that we don't have things like a French curve. You could use a French curve to do this job, but if you don't have one on hand, then a little bit of electrical tape will do you just fine. So I added a little bit of a curve there, and I want to make it so that it goes gently out to meet up with the top, and then gently down to meet up with the lower part of the curve. And then when I go in, I smooth it out a little bit with the pencil, and then remove the part that I'm not going to cut. And that gives me a nice cuttable and also attractive curve to go from where we meet the body up to where we overhang the body.
Cool.
What we need to do next here is set up the curve on the top, because we don't want the end of the fretboard to be just flat. We want it to have a nice curve. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to strike a line up to the top, rotate the piece here, give myself a nice little indication of where we're at. Then I use a square to give myself the square line off of that. Now you guys saw earlier that we use this template here to do the sound hole, and this has a specific curve to it, and we want where the fretboard overhangs to have the same curve. So we use this template to match up like so. Okay, so now that we have that curve established, we can bring this out and give ourselves a nice little mark there. And that gives us where we're going to put in our relief cut when we go to cut this out, because we want to leave this material in place, and then we'll take it out with a sander.
So there are a couple ways you can shape the back. One is the squarish neck.
Yeah, this would be really good for a playing slide. It's really strong. You could set your strings high up off of it. You're not going to break your neck or bend your neck. But also, if you like fingerstyle more, you'd probably want to round it out, which is what we're doing on this project. And we're just picking out how thick we want to do Tim's neck here. Okay, so we picked a fairly thick profile for Tim's neck. So I've got my straight edge in place, and it's connecting the curves that we did on the top and the curves that we did on the bottom. And I'm just going to strike a line along here to connect them together. You can see it meets the curve there, and down here it meets the curve there. So what we need to do now is draw out the spot where our tailpiece mounts to the neck. And we like to do this at an angle. It puts the angle from the top of the bridge down to the tailpiece at a better angle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use this neck to trace it out, because on our template, we designed the template before we came up with this fancy contraption. So
the angled,
you know,
aspect
on your template you can include this stuff. So I'm gonna go here, and we do our angle down to leave the space, and then go up around the corner, down here.
And this piece of wood is a 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, right? Blank, yeah, it's a 1.5 by 1.5 by 36 inch blank. This happens to be poplar, but this happens to be
black palm.
Black palm. Yep.
Now ours had to be very skinny here because we have to fit a guitar pickup up above it. But Tim doesn't have to, so we're going to be able to make the inside stuff here a lot stronger, a lot thicker.
So Whisker, how do you know where to put the tailpiece in relation to the rest of the
we
box?
wanted it at an angle here.
Yep.
And it needs to be thick enough for the screws that come through this to have something to go into. And the top of the box is 1/8.
Okay.
Or excuse me, 1/4 down from the top of this board. This board obviously won't be here because it's the material we're removing. But 1/4 inch down from that is where the top of the box is. And you can see that when we place it like so, we've got the tailpiece just peeking up.
I see.
And that tailpiece is peeking up out of the sound hole that we'll be creating on the top of the box
Okay.
with this template. So in reality, it's just peeking a little bit up above there so you can get your strings in there, and it holds the bottom of the strings and doubles as a sound hole.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so we've got the curve here underneath where the fretboard curves down, and I want to pull the height off of this. So I'm just going to get it there, and then I'm going to bring it down to the bottom here and find out where that meets up with this curve, and give myself a little mark there so that we can draw the line flat across there.
The good old straight edge.
Yes, indeed. So I put that in place on both sides, and now I can strike a line from that point down to this point. And then I can just go in there and smooth this out to make it really easy to cut. And then I remove the lines that I don't need.
Okay.
Just like so. Alright, so now we've got this all marked up, and it's time to start doing the rough cuts. We'll be doing our relief cut where we marked in here down to our line that we just made, and we'll be going in and removing some of this material, and then we'll come back and show you guys where we're at.
Awesome.
Okay, Eddie's going to cut the relief cut and then a long cut here. Okay, so we've got most of the cuts done. Eddie did a pretty good job. We'll be cleaning all this up, of course. A little bit of sanding here and there. And the main thing here is that before we can do the last cut, we we need to do the relief cut here where the nut goes, because that's where the blade ends up. So I'm going to do that with a coping saw really quickly. Okay, so all the rough cuts are done, and it's time to go in and smooth everything out. This is the state of it. You can see there's still cut marks and stuff on there, and we're about to go in and get rid of those.
Yep. What are we going to use? Mouse sander?
Use a belt sander for the rough stuff, and then a mouse sander for the fine detail work.
Awesome.
Okay, so the rough sanding pass is done. Cleaned up all the cut marks along the bottom of the neck here.
Yeah.
Focusing especially on the curves.
Yep.
And here, and all these really nasty cut marks are gone through there. And along the face here of where the tuning machines come through.
Awesome.
Now for the detail sanding.
Okay.
Next up, we need to start doing the rounding of the back of the neck so that this becomes curved.
Awesome.
Okay, so we got the rough cutting done on the rounding of the neck. Just put it in there with the belt sander, and now Andy's going to go in over the whole thing with a mouse sander and clean up all the stuff and get the definition of all the curves as they come together, put together, and she'll break all the edges so that there's nothing sharp. And then we'll get back to you guys.
Alright, so since this is Tim's guitar, I'm going to actually have him do some of the mouse sanding, and I just thought I'd warn him as well as you guys what not to sand just yet. So first, don't sand the fretboard, and then where the nut is going to be sitting, I wouldn't sand that either. We want to try to get some of these edges just kind of smoothed out, but not like, you don't want to change the shape of it, just, you know, ease the corners a bit. And then of course here you want to get all the rough edges like we were mentioning earlier out. You don't have to worry about the edge here because that's going to be going into the box. So you don't need to spend too much time, nor do you need to worry about this area because you're not going to see it. And then in terms of this, yeah, you could try mouse sanding it just where that line is so we get that curve. You see that? Yeah. And then, yeah. And then we'll go from there and we'll see how it looks then. Okay?
Okay, so we've got the first finish sanding done. All of the rough bits are taken out. The rest of the cut marks are all gone. Next up, I'm getting in here and taking the cuts out of that area.
Yep, and we're going to use a
and you
drum
guys
wall.
rounded this out as well.
Correct.
So I used the rasp and the coping saw to make sure that this was nice and flat and nice and 90 degrees. So what we need to do now is mark the holes for tailpiece. So a little bit of lead there. Get that centered. I'm going to go through and make some marks.
Now we're going to drill some
We'll use the
pilot
drill
holes.
press to put pilot holes in. If you don't use pilot holes on poplar, it will crack.
I gotcha.
There we go.
Okay. You should make a smiley face with it. Oh no!
Oh no! I'm not happy. Oh.
I gave it a black eye.
Okay, so we've got the holes in place, and we got our little tailpiece here.
We're giving him eyeglasses or a welding mask. No, wait. You know Doctor Who? You know when all the people become machines?
Cybermen.
Cybermen! This is a cyber cigar box tailpiece.
Okay, so we got the tailpiece fixed here. And the string's pulling it this way, so all the force goes right down into the wood. Makes it super, super strong. Alright, and then for the last step on the neck here, we're going to apply a nice coat of wax and orange oil.
Okay. Feed and wax.
So this is just
Howard's
beeswax
feed and wax.
and orange oil. Orange oil gives the wood something besides water to suck up,
Yep.
which is really good. And beeswax keeps it that way and
Yep.
also makes it a little shiny.
Yep.
It smells amazing,
Smells like orange oil and beeswax.
which is a really good combination.
You're not using Diameter's beeswax.
He brought us honey.
Honey and beeswax. Kinda. Honey and honeycomb. Because we want to eat that
I
stuff.
was being facetious. I didn't know you actually had any from them.
Yeah.
I'm joking around.
Woo! Look at that. Oh, that brings out the grain nicely, doesn't it? Shininess. I know some folks have suggested using like polyurethane or linseed oil, which we've done before. Although that gives too much of a yellow tint for our likes. They've suggested, what kind of oil? Like
Dutch oil might work
Dutch
well.
oil, yep. And we've used that upstairs
Shellac
on
might work well
on
if
the
you're
desk.
good at that.
Yep.
Wood's really thirsty here where you've cut into the end grain, so it needs a little extra. Because you opened up the capillaries in the wood. If you think of wood as just a big straw, it makes a lot more sense.
Well, made out of many small straws.
Lots of straws.
Many xylem and phloem, baby. Gorgeous. And that's just one coat. So for this black palm, we've already done one coat way back when. And so we're just going to add another coat. Ooh. It's got like a piano finish. Are you gonna do that actually, Whisker, for this one?
What?
Do a piano finish for this, for the black palm?
I'm not entirely sure. Okay, a little bit more on this one because it would have sucked up the first little bit.
Essentially, that's why I think it's called feed-in wax, because it's feeding on.
The moisture really helps the wood be where it wants to be, like it was still alive and doing its job. And then the wax locks it into that state.
So it's like a zombie. It's like a zombie cigar box guitar. Reviving it. It all ties.
It smells really good.
Smell-o-vision.
Smells like food.
Smells like Whisker's hungry.
There we go.
There we go.
There's some guitar necks.